God, this is a hard question. Uh, what's up? Hope all is well. I'm Darren Greene, host of the Darren Greene Show, and you're watching hashtag Verse TV. Be sure to comment, share, rate, and subscribe.
So your show dropped, and it
Right.
sounds so professional. Even the way you mentioned worldwide, you studied in broadcasting in school, or did you work in broadcasting?
So my first, because I went to two schools. My first school, I went to Central Penn College, and where I studied in corporate communications. I'm now in New Jersey City University, and I'm in media arts. And we learned a lot about sound. We learned a lot about video production. I took a radio class a couple semesters ago where I learned how to use different audio editing softwares. I've even used their studio because we have a state-of-the-art studio in our college. And that's why some of the episodes, especially when Derek Dahl first came on, they were stellar because we used that studio. Unfortunately, we can't use it this semester. We was negotiating some things, but we have a suitable studio because I'm also the podcast producer of my newspaper, and we have a separate studio, in which, because the school used to have a radio station, and we basically use that space now. I've been the podcast producer for about 4 semesters since I've been here, and we've gotten new equipment, and I've gotten better at broadcasting. I don't have any official experience. I never worked for no radio station. I only interned at 2 different radio stations, one in Brooklyn and one down where I'm from. Yeah. But
Okay.
other than that, it's just, it's all self-taught.
Come on now, self-taught. That's the best way to do it.
Okay.
Get it together. So, what's the
All right.
hardest part about What's the hardest part about being about running a podcast? Because it's not easy.
Content creating. Everything else is okay. If you got a good microphone, it sounds great. But content creating is what you say. I sit for hours, writing and trying to figure out if this is trendy enough to talk about and how people are going to perceive it. I always talk about what do I want to say about these topics. That's the hardest part. And for me, I do this every week. So it's kind of like, along with doing other things like work, school. Yeah. I remember one semester I had worked 2 jobs and was still managing to do this podcast and do my classes and pass with flying colors. But definitely waiting to graduate because weight is a bit off my shoulders.
Come on now. I'll talk about
writing the content. I know y'all understand too, because it's hard, like trying to figure out what to talk about and where to find it. If it's
listen, Aaron's a
people
genius.
will try you. People will no, that's
course
wrong.
They will. Of course they will. That's why you gotta, do some. You do some research. Just can't be up here talking because you got a platform to just talk about anything, just talking outside of your mouth. You do want to, know what you're talking about, have some kind of fluid sense of it, because people will call you out, especially when you put it out there to the world. So now we talk about the hardest part. What's the most enjoyable part of running a podcast?
I don't know. It's like I feel like every day. I call it podcast day. Like I call it like it's the Darren Greene Show day. Like every time when I get into the studio, Derek's there, and we're just we start that, we press that record button. It's a blast. I think it's the funnest thing to do. I wish that it could be the only thing that I can do, but right now, to gear it to that point, I have to work hard on it. But yeah, I think recording is fun.
Got it. So tell me this, with all your experience and knowledge, what's the most important thing to remember when creating a good podcast or any social media endeavor, and why is it important?
It's important to have some type of integrity when it comes to, especially if you're talking about news. I don't know anything else about like the relationship podcast or anything or any other topic, but when you're talking about current events or you're talking about, even celebrity news, just to have that integrity to tell the truth, tell your opinion. There's no wrong with that, but also be credible and.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely be credible as much you can be, because your career stands on that, especially your word is everything in that. And so what is the main thing that you want our Verse TV audience to learn about Darren Greene and the Darren Greene show in your podcast?
What do we want you guys to know? What I want them to know is that oh my God, this is a hard question. That I'm just a real down to earth type of person. I'm not, I speak truth to my topics, and I also I want them to know that, and I use authenticity, and I have good passion when I talk to these topics. I really care about the listeners. You know, I always, when I do podcasts, I sometimes I speak for the people. Like, I speak for the general public, because I know I was that person that didn't have that voice. So now with this platform, I want to use it to project what people are thinking and what people are saying.
As you
Not
should.
particularly saying if I'm just putting it out there just for discussion.
Right.
I always say it on the podcast. I'm like, speaking for the people.
I get it. And that's what keeps you doing what you're doing. People love it, clearly.
Yep.
I'm just saying. And so what's next for you in the Darren Greene Show?
What's next for the Darren Greene Show? I want to expand my presence on YouTube. I'm going back to YouTube. It's hard. I definitely got over the discouragement of not getting the views, but I understand once the numbers come in, the numbers will roll in eventually. If you keep on doing something, if you do it well, the numbers will come in eventually. Which
Absolutely
has definitely shown with the podcast. I mean, when I tell you, the podcast charts in different countries, like, I'm able to see how the podcast is doing as far as numbers. I think we peaked at number 32 in the entertainment news section on Apple Podcasts. So that was like a big achievement. We peaked at number 32, and we just been just straddling the charts.
Come on now.
Yeah.
And happy belated birthday. Is it coming up or happening?
It's coming up this Saturday.
This week coming. Okay, it's coming. So, happy
October
early
3rd.
birthday then. Happy early birthday.
Yes, I'm turning 23.
I'm trying to forget. Awesome. So I just want to say one thing, and then we have this last question, and we'll move to the second part. But when it comes to the YouTube, that's what I was going to say. That don't ever be discouraged by the numbers. And the reason why I say that is because numbers can be bought. And, that doesn't, it helps to look good. But if you're being true and honest to who you are and what you want to do, the right people need to see it, will see it. People have I don't have the biggest YouTube presence because most of my stuff is Instagram and Facebook, but I do have YouTube because you have to have it. And now, especially now because everything's virtual, but people are finding more and more ways to find things through YouTube. And I've been found on YouTube just posting those things I have now, and I don't have millions of views. So I'm just saying, having it on all across your board, like having it on your podcast, having it on, on YouTube and maybe one other place, Instagram for it, is what's gonna take your brand to the next level. Not if you have 100 million views, but if I can go to your Instagram and see that same brand all across, if I can go to your YouTube and see the same thing all across the board, and you can tie it in on your Instagram and say, hey, go check out YouTube for the full episode. Instead, it could be snippets, and YouTube will get full episodes. So you got this. And so the last question of this before we move to our 2 questions we ask everybody is, what's the best advice that you ever received?
Best advice that I've ever received was to just let things happen. Don't try to rush things. Don't try to look ahead on the horizon. Just focus on what's going on right now. Part of my problem with, having a presence or trying to get views or anything like that is always I'm looking to the future, worrying about the wrong things. I was trying to figure out how to monetize this podcast from day one, but you have to understand, you have to focus on the content and what's going on right now instead of looking at the horizon. So I would say that was the advice that I got from, I think it was my co-host that said that. Yeah.
Well, that was a great way to end first part 1 and segue into part 2. So yes, thank you for that. Again, this is Darren Greene. That's been, that's a personal.
Well, you can find me at TDGS Media on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. That is The Darren Greene Show. Subscribe to the podcast, which streams on any platform you listen to podcasts, which is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, wherever.
All that.
We drop our episodes every Friday. I say about 6-ish. Whenever we get it done, but it's definitely done
on Fridays.